Good morning, distinguished members, partners and affiliates of SANEC. Also on behalf of our strategic partner, co-initiator and organizer, Enterprise Africa International, and our industry speakers from the Eurochamber, Trade and Investment KwaZulu-Natal, Weert Schreuder and Netco Logistics, a warm and heartily welcome live from Johannesburg. We proudly present to you the first e-commerce opportunities in Africa for Dutch exporters webinar. My name is Mark Achterdebos. I'm the managing director of the Southern African Netherlands Chamber of Commerce and Industry for EMEA. And I'm pleased and delighted to be your host this morning. E-commerce in Africa has been experiencing rapid growth, and not just since the Corona crisis. The trend towards e-commerce in Africa will continue to grow positively as consumers adapt to the convenience of being able to globally source quality products online. Africa's main economic centers have predicted that the e-commerce industry is expecting growth rates between 20 and 30% annually. It's the reason that SANEC and Enterprise Africa saw the opportunity and need to align and create a long-term collaboration, which will be beneficial to exporters from the Netherlands. The solution created by Enterprise Africa is, in our view, the tool to start exporting your products to Africa more easily, or to expand or boost your current exports into Africa, taking the advantage of growing e-commerce and make sure you sit in the front row. Within the next hour, we proudly present you 5 knowledgeable industry speakers, all decision makers in the field of business, who will bring you valuable information, concrete tips in the areas of e-commerce. Topics which will be addressed will be, amongst others, market entry into African countries, the future of e-commerce in Africa, how taxes work in e-commerce, shipping products to Africa, logistics and warehousing, the African Continental Free Trade Agreement 2021, and the Enterprise Africa online platform for B2B wholesale. These are very exciting and new business initiatives and developments taking place, which will contribute to new opportunities and to new local economic growth. But let me now first move to the first presentation of this morning by Ms. Donné Kruger. I'm very delighted and privileged to have Donné as a first speaker in this session, because Donné is a highly experienced trade and investment advisor and facilitator, being involved as board member of the Eurochamber in and for Southern Africa. A Eurochamber is a chamber of commerce which champions the interest of all European business into South and Southern Africa. And she is also involved as a senior manager in trade in the KwaZulu-Natal in the Gauteng area. And that's why on a daily basis works with entrepreneurs, multinationals from South Africa, from Europe and outside Europe, and all kinds of market strategies. Donné will elaborate on doing business within South Africa, and I would like to ask Donné to take the virtual floor.
Thank you so much, Mark, and it's so great to have our strategic partners on board, Interjest, SANEC, Germany Trade and Invest, Enterprise Africa, Netco Logistics. A very good morning to you from the EU Chamber of Commerce and Trade and Investment KwaZulu-Natal. I think it's a great program with a really good lineup. So the purpose of this morning is really to just provide you with a brief snapshot on doing business in South Africa in the field of e-commerce, and also what we're doing as the EU Chamber in terms of advocating for a conducive environment with regards to that. I'm going to share my screen just to take you through some of the opportunities. Can you see my screen?
Yes, perfect.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great, but now I can't see it. Just give me 2 seconds to minimize. Okay, in terms of the presentation structure, we're going to be just defining what we mean by e-commerce, chat about the current environment, look at some of the global trends that's shaping the environment, some of the growth trajectories. I'm also looking at the influence of e-commerce trade and the COVID pandemic, how it's shaped the opportunity. I'll take you through the South African framework, speak around some of the work that we're doing as the EU Chamber. I'm also looking at digital commerce acceleration, some of the statistics and opportunities, just to kind of set the scene. So in terms of our definition, the World Trade Organization defines electronic commerce as the production, distribution, marketing, sale, or delivery of goods and services by electronic means. So it is quite an involved process. If we look at the current environment, I thought this slide is very relevant because it has been very challenging in the past year to digitize businesses, get everybody online. At the same time, it's exciting. It has shown also how resilient companies can be. It has also increased international cooperation. If we look at the global focus after COVID, there's a huge focus around sustainability and also utilizing the Sustainable Development Goals as a possible business opportunity. If we look at what's happened in the world, about 71 million people have been pushed into poverty. Tourism is facing huge challenges all over the world in terms of bookings online that have gone down. During the pandemic, about 1.6 billion workers in the informal economy have the risk of losing their livelihoods. In some of the developing countries, only 35% of businesses have access to credit, and small-scale food producers are hard hit by the crisis. So with all these challenges, we need to look at how do we create the business opportunity and what needs to happen to ensure that our SMEs also have opportunity. If you look at some of the global megatrends over the past year, there's been a huge move to advanced robotics and AI in the technology and 4IR space, digitization of businesses, a huge focus around additive manufacturing, and also creating what they call product as a service. If we look at policy and governance in terms of trade, there's been more interventionism, more protectionism also in trade and investment, and also more bilateral and regional and ad hoc economic cooperation, which is a positive as well. If we look at the sustainability aspects, a lot of the production processes have changed. So what that means is people who may have had a client no longer have a client because products and processes have changed. And there's been a huge impact on physical supply chain. So there is a great focus around sustainability of policy and regulations. So if we look at the international trade growth trajectories, what they said is in terms of business, you have to focus around 4 potential growth trajectories, meaning either reshoring, so bringing back some of the services which you may have outsourced, regionalization, looking at the opportunity, not just in South Africa, but also in the entire SADC region and also in the entire Africa as well. Diversification in terms of some of your services, and then also replicating your service from one region to the next. If we look at e-commerce and trade, some of the key points mentioned by the International Trade Center is that there's been a huge ramp up in online shopping, social media use, internet telephony and teleconferencing, and also streaming of videos and films. And I think also the reason why we're sitting here this morning, there's been a huge spike in business to business interactions, also business to consumer interactions. And if we look at the sectors that have had the most traction, it's things like food products, household essentials, and also medical supply. E-commerce for goods and services has also been adversely impacted by the same factors that caused the disruption in the first place. Such disruptions have resulted in delivery delays or outright cancellation of orders. For example, if we look at, I mentioned the example of the tourism industry and bookings because of uncertainty. There's also been things like increasing prices to unreasonably high levels, product safety concerns, data safety. And these are some of the aspects that have to be addressed within the e-commerce opportunity. It's also highlighted the glaring divide of those that have access to the digital economy and those that don't. So some of the small businesses have been hard hit, especially some of the small producers, sellers, and consumers in the least developed countries. At the same time, it's a major opportunity for them to leapfrog on technology if that infrastructure can be provided. Governments have adopted new measures in some cases, and in some countries, most governments have liaised with private sector to provide data at a more reasonable costs as well. And there's been also scrapping transaction costs on digital payments and mobile money transfers, and this has improved delivery and other logistics. So that has been a positive. The global nature of COVID-19 and its impact on e-commerce has also encouraged international cooperation. For example, we've had to rely on international webinars and seminars to create awareness of our product offerings as well as business. And e-commerce can also support business by making economies more competitive and be an economic driver for both as well. But at the same time, as much as it's an opportunity, it's also highlighted the vulnerabilities. So I think a lot of what has happened in South Africa is, how to create access for SMEs specifically. If we look at our policies or our framework, there's a huge focus around building domestic digital infrastructure, creating skills and capabilities. South Africa has very high unemployment at the moment of 34%, which is incredibly high. So creating digital platforms for South African companies, creating also international partnerships is key for us as well. And we've seen the opportunity in South Africa specifically to position ourselves as a regional hub for digital services and infrastructure, data centers. There have been huge investments in the past 5 years also in certain areas in the country in data centers, digital technologies and equipment, digital service exports, and also locus of knowledge for data governance and the digital economy. There's a huge opportunity for creating opportunities for SMEs. There's a huge drive for digitization of public sector data and also data sovereignty and localization. What that means is all the data that is collected within South Africa to also have control around personal data as well for operating within South Africa as well. So what has happened in terms of the South African framework and priority impacting on e-commerce? A 4IR commission has been set up and an implementation plan was developed by the South African Department of Communications and Digital Technologies. In April 2021, a data and cloud policy to support digitization has been developed, specifically with a view of using it as an enabler for social and economic development. Data security and protection of personal information has been emphasized as well. There was recently a virtual colloquium where some of the aspects that were being advocated for were addressed by the minister, the National Minister for the Department of Communications and Digital Technologies. Huge focus around skills development, capacity building, ultimately to increase entrepreneurship as well. And what they've done is they are also collaborating with the Department of Science and Technology for research and innovation. And they talk about the rollout of what they call critical information infrastructure data. This is quite a broad term, but it includes all the IT systems, databases, networks, and it also includes people, buildings, facilities, and processes that are fundamental to the effective operation within South Africa to be stored within the borders. What they've seen and the research shows that the digital economy has the potential for 66,000 jobs. So what happened was the data and cloud policy was developed. It was opened up for comments, and a number of comments were received. So some of the advocacy issues mentioned was the establishment of a high-performance computing data processing center, especially for government information. There were some concerns around prescription to the private sector, but what they've indicated is that there's no prescription to the private sector. And there's also talk of the establishment of a state digital infrastructure company. So some of the private sector companies were saying, that it may be a major opportunity to partner to connect government sectors with government institutions. There was mention of open data and also threat to data security, but this was addressed saying that there's reinforcement of cybersecurity protection, especially of personal information as well. And then when they talk about localization and cross-border data flows, it shows that the confirmation that this is critical for critical information infrastructure to be stored. Some of the concerns raised was that this provides an additional costs for multinationals wanting to set up in South Africa, and also for an impediment to investment, as most of the infrastructure could be unnecessarily classified under a very broad term. But government has said that it is imperative to store this information. So what we've seen is some of the challenges to e-commerce business in South Africa at the moment, and which we need to address, is high data costs, so exorbitant data prices. Also infrastructure, especially in some of our townships as well, in terms of lack of roads or standardized residential address systems. But there are quite a number of innovations trying to address this as well. There are very high delivery costs and also inventory management. But this is not just a problem unique to South Africa, it's also a global issue. But it's just some of the advocacy issues which we see as the role of the EU Chamber in lobbying for a conducive environment. So what we've done is we've developed a position paper on key challenges of relevance for EU business, because we also see that e-commerce is a major opportunity for European business. Information sharing among the EU bilateral chambers on the issue. We are also scheduling engagements with the Department of Communication and Digital Technology and other stakeholders as well. And we are part of the engagement in the parliamentary process. So as European business, I think you can rest assured that your interests are being advocated at a parliamentary level. And there are certain partnerships that exist through what we call the EU South African Partners for Growth. It's building on research done in 2020 on telecommunications regulations. We are also an active member of the 4IR working group that is run by the German Chamber. I see the German Chamber is also represented today. What we see as a major opportunity, I wanted to quote the Roger George, who's the head of advisory consumer industry leader at Deloitte. They've just provided a report, but he says that digital commerce has got to solve a specific customer problem. Leveraging your data using human-centered logic and exceptional design will assist retailers to prioritize and also fulfill customer demands at the core of their interactive and omni-channel digital commerce experience. So some of the top takeaways from this recent report shows there's been a huge growth in online shopping. It's also going to be further accelerated because of COVID-19 concerns and also because of the convenience of online shopping. There needs to be a focus on an omni-channel experience. So it'll become a blend of in-store and online shopping experiences across all categories, because the South African consumer is a very distinguished customer. In South Africa at the moment, e-commerce has got very popular categories like electronics and fashion. The clothing, electronics, footwear, household appliances, and health products are currently the most popular categories among South African online shopping. We've also seen a huge increase in fresh food orders due to grocery delivery apps that have provided a strong boost as well. Online shoppers, as I said, are very distinguished. More than 2/3 say that they go to a specific online store. These are companies that participated in a survey for this report. Consumers also choose an online store based on key influencing factors, things like effective checkout, low delivery costs, very clear return and refund policies, and also specifically looking at cumbersome returns and unreliable delivery times. So I think online retailers can address these. They'll see a huge adoption of further unlocking of the potential of e-commerce. So some of the stats, just to show you that there's been a predicted growth of increase in 30% within a year. Online retail giants reported massive increases in sales and revenue. For example, local companies like Takealot had a revenue growth of 28%, while One Day only recorded 128% increase in sales. According to research conducted by MobiCred, consumers above 60 have also increased significantly, but there's a huge potential. We've only tapped into 2% of South Africa's total retail spend, and we haven't even touched on the regional opportunity. So this is 14% less than the global average, and it's also showing that online shopping is beneficial to small businesses and consumers. So it's a huge opportunity as well. So just in conclusion, Sustainable Development Goals is a massive business opportunity. Reshoring, regionalization, diversification, and replication opportunities exists. Online shopping is growing. An omni-channel experience is imperative. In areas where infrastructure may be lacking, there's opportunity for drone deliveries. It's already happening in specific countries like Kigali in Rwanda, it's happening. Major opportunities in electronics and fashion, and other sectors include clothing, electronics, footwear, household appliances, health, food, and fresh food are top sectors to cater for in South Africa. And then I think what is very important is creating a specific online store and marketing yourself as being cost efficient, having an easy payment system, very good data security, very clear policies on refunds, efficient and cost efficient delivery will earn you loyal customers in South Africa. So this is just a quick snapshot, but just to say thank you very much. If you require more information, you're welcome to contact us, and we look forward to interacting with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Doné, for your clear and in-depth view on the e-commerce business in South Africa. And this is in the light, you presented in the light of the global challenges, opportunities, and changes in the framework of the current economy. Very exciting presentation, and thank you for that. I already saw a couple of participants requesting for the presentations if they are available. Yes, they are available. They will be sent in the follow-up to you, including if you have an interest in the recordings as well. So the presentations will come in the follow-up. And if you have any questions, you can share them in the chat box, which it's already taking place. At after the last speaker, we have an opportunity to handle some of the questions, and which we will do. Okay, thank you. Moving on to our next speaker, Ms. Tulisile Kalekili. And my apologies if I pronounce it not in a perfect way. She's Executive Manager Strategy and Operations at the beautiful province KwaZulu-Natal, at Trade and Investment KwaZulu-Natal. She's also a proud winner in the corporate category of the Business Women Association and Regional Achiever Awards, which she worked in a diverse range of industries from fast-moving consumer goods to telecoms and financial services. She has succeeded in all those industries, and her hard work has ensured that she received Beyond Excellence Awards in the Square of Marketing Excellence. So it's a great honor to have you here. And Tulisile will give an overview on the top performing industry sectors in South Africa. So also for you, the digital floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark, and a very good morning to our listeners who have joined online. I must say that I'm actually quite excited to be part of this initiative. And I'm greeting you from a very warm Durban in South Africa, which is a province in KwaZulu-Natal. I'm going to be sharing my screen now. In terms of my presentation flow, what I will be doing is I'll really be setting the context so that you understand the global context again.
Sorry, Mark, are you there? I don't know what happened technically. I think Tuli is zoned out.
Yes, I was first checking if my Wi-Fi was, but then you never know what's happening nowadays. But it is okay. She might have indeed a connectivity problem at the moment.
I think we should move on to the next speaker, and then Tuli can join us when she comes back online.
Yes, I think that would be a good idea to do so. Hope it will be. She can restore it. Yeah. Okay. Let's move on to. Let's see. Hope that you will have access to a presentation later on. We move to our third speaker. That's Mr. Dylan Rosenberg. Dylan is an associate with the Word Schreuder Attorneys Company, and he will elaborate on the African Continental Free Trade Agreement 2021, which is one of the exciting developments in Africa at the moment. Dylan, can you elaborate on the Free Trade Agreement? And I would like to give you the digital floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction, Mark, and a warm welcome to all of our attendees at today's webinar. With the emphasis on e-commerce and the opportunities that present themselves for Dutch companies, I believe that we can all safely agree that one of the most important aspects worth our consideration is how exactly we get the goods to the consumer. So it is my distinct pleasure to be able to present to you today on the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. Please allow me just a moment to share my screen. Is everybody able to see it? Wonderful. All right. President Ramaphosa has described the African Continental Free Trade Agreement as a flood that is going to lift all the boats and create a level playing field for small and big companies to do meaningful business. Now, as the name suggests, let me just change it here. The African Continental Free Trade Agreement is a regional economic community and specifically a free trade area. It's been described as the largest free trade agreement since the inception of the World Trade Organization in 1994, and is the largest free trade area in the world measured by the number of participating countries. Trading under the African Continental Free Trade Agreement began in January of this year, and this is something that we should really take note of. The World Bank's Global Director of Trade, Investment and Competitiveness, Caroline Freund, has actually remarked saying that the African Continental Free Trade Agreement has had the effect of creating a single continent-wide market for goods and services, business and investment, which would reshape the African economies and demonstrate to the world that Africa is emerging as a leader on the global trade agenda. Now, regional economic communities aren't something that are uncommon, and throughout the course of our history, we've actually been exposed to several, which you can see listed below. Some of them are the South African Development Community, which is composed of 16 countries. We then get the East African Community, which is composed of 5 countries. We get the Common Market of East and South Africa, composed of 21 countries. And for our European counterparts and attendees today, they'll be well aware of the European Union, which is composed of 27 countries. So the question then becomes, how does a free trade area function and what benefit can we derive from the free trade area? Now, free trade areas involve the gradual reduction or removal of tariffs and trade barriers to all goods which are imported from one member state to another, although subject to certain exceptions. This benefits a company because it may export its products to other companies in countries within the free trade area with either the partial or full abolition of tariff and trade barriers. They retain generally their own individual tariffs and barriers in relation to countries which are not party to the free trade area, which obviously means that member states have more attractive and desirous qualities, which obviously will improve trade between the various members. Now, one of the interesting aspects of a free trade area, which is worth taking note of, is that there are discrepancies which exist in the rates which are offered by various countries. Now, due to these discrepancies, non-party companies sometimes cherry pick a country which is party to the free trade agreement, which offers the lowest tariffs and trade barriers, and sets up in that country in order to benefit from the lower import tariff and subsequently to dispatch goods to the intended recipient, which is party to the free trade area, without having to pay the higher tariff cost which applies in that country. Going back to the regional economic communities that we spoke about earlier, we can really see the huge value of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, because it actually comprises 55 countries. You can see at the second bullet point some of the countries which form part. And most importantly, as was mentioned by Caroline Freund, the African Continental Free Trade Agreement will cover a market of approximately 1.2 billion people, with an estimated combined gross domestic product valued at roughly $3.4 trillion. Now, for me to try and extrapolate that into Rand would mean I would be here all day trying to read that number. So I'm actually not going to do myself that disservice. The question then becomes, what does the African Continental Free Trade Area seek to achieve? And it's looking at creating a single continental market for goods and services with the free movement of business persons and investments. It hopes to expand intra-African trade across the regional economic community and the continent in general. It seeks to enhance competitiveness, contribute to the movement of capital and persons, and facilitate investments, as well as to lay the foundation for the establishment of a continental customs union, which would be the next step in the process. Now, we might be sitting here asking ourselves, well, it's all well and good, but what really is the benefit that we will be seeking to derive through this free trade area? Now, historically speaking, African trade in comparison to the rest of the world is still very low, at less than 3%. And the question you have to ask yourself then is why? Now, typically, African commodities and natural resources still dominate the export basket. Africa trades less within itself and more with third countries, increasing Africa's balance of payments and a rising trade dependence on foreign markets. There's also a trend of insecurity, corruption, and border conflicts, which do not help the process. Now, the African Continental Free Trade Agreement is actually Africa's answer to this problem and its attempt to reverse this trend and to bring some great opportunities for entrepreneurs and companies at large. The significant reduction in tariffs and the costs of trade would lower import prices and increase the purchasing power of consumers willing to increase their consumption. Now, this is a market of 1.2 billion people. If you can interest 1.2 billion people, the opportunity for great business is definitely present. Cutting off the trade barriers and quotas allows these consumers to access a greater range of products in domestic markets and to enhance the competitiveness behind that process as well. Now, lowering your trade costs stimulates domestic and international economies by increasing consumption and diversifying your markets. It expands market access for exporters of goods and services because your movement of goods up and throughout Africa is done at a lower tariff rate than if you were trading individually without the free trade area in place. The diminishing import prices may also reduce the costs of imported raw materials and intermediate inputs for downstream producers. The cuts in production costs increase competitiveness and allow countries to integrate into the global value chain. Trade liberalization allows domestic firms to gain from economies of scale, and these economies of scale might nevertheless pose new challenges. Indeed, if a company benefits from economies of scale, it could put the company in a dominant position and thus prevent market access to smaller companies. So that is maybe something that you need to keep in mind as well. There are, of course, practical challenges to the African Continental Free Trade Agreement as well. One of them is rules of origin, which simply states that, you know, you will only benefit from the free trade view if the origin of the product is falling within the African continent. Now, that would mean that either the product is drawn out of Africa or it's brought in, but has had some form of change done to it. Now, this is quite costly and administrative exercise, which does pose a bit of an issue. There's also other non-tariff barriers where we see the other regional economic communities, such as the East African community, the Southern African Development Community, the Common Market of Eastern and Southern Africa, where they've all addressed measures to address non-tariff barriers and the effect on intra-regional economic community trade. The mechanisms have had limited success in addressing persistent and recurring barriers, and they do require policy changes and actual enforcement of regional economic commitments. We find, as we've mentioned earlier, a trend of poor infrastructure across the continent, which does create a bit of an issue, as well as bribery and corruption, which also has a role to play. There's also a trend in Africa of low online trust, but that seems to be taking a turn, particularly with the current COVID-19 pandemic, where people have had basically no choice in some circumstances other than to rely on the value and benefit of e-commerce. Now, after all that we've gone through now, it's important for us to then say, how can we help you? And the things that we might be able to assist you with are to identify beneficial trade routes throughout Africa, to establish Pan-African business development strategies, and to launch business in various African countries. So please feel free to give us a call. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dylan. That was a fantastic overview on how businesses and countries can benefit from the free trade area, but also taking into account the challenges and what to do to overcome these challenges, that benefits will win. And that gave us a fantastic overview. So thank you so much for your contribution. I think I go now to Patrick Durich as a speaker.
Yep.
Patrick is absolutely an I can say an expert in transport and logistics. He is at the moment the CEO and owner of NATCO SA International Transport in South Africa. But he's such an expert as he held previous positions with companies like Rohlich Grindrod, Danzas, Cargo Master, and TNT. So we have here an absolutely expert who knows the best way and most effective way to move goods from A to B to C and backwards. Patrick will elaborate on logistics and warehousing in regards to e-commerce. Patrick, digital floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Mark, for the nice introduction. I'm going to, I think we share the screen now. Is it? Okay. Good, yes. As Mark mentioned, my name is Patrick Durich. I'm the CEO of NATCO and also the owner. I was born and I've lived most of my life in South Africa. I've been active in the freight forwarding and logistics sector for about 30 years. And the last 20 years, I've been built up a business, which is now my own, which is NATCO. So I do have quite a lot of experience in the Southern African and African market. My presentation is going to be a bit different. I am going to elaborate still on obviously logistics, but I just also thought it's quite important to maybe give you an insight of how I see it to invest in South Africa and what you would need to know. And I've prepared just 3-4 slides, very simple, and I call it the high-level SWOT analysis. So I will be telling you basically the strengths.
Sorry, if
Yes?
I may, you haven't shared your presentation yet, huh? Just to make sure, because we can't see it yet. So, but I thought maybe.
Okay, sorry.
Yet, so just checking.
We are doing something new here today, so that's why maybe it is a bit.
That's totally fine. Those things. Yeah, it's there. Fantastic. Thank you.
Is it now there?
It's there. Yeah.
Okay. Now the only thing is I can't see it.
It starts with high-level SWOT analysis.
Okay, yes, all right. I did mention that we were going to go into the high level. I've made a high-level SWOT analysis, basically outlining the strengths and the weaknesses and the opportunities and the threats which would come into play to invest and to prepare to coming into South Africa. Sorry, I don't know. Can you see the next slide? Okay, so here we have the strengths. Obviously, South Africa is the gateway to Africa, and we have a solid rail and road and port infrastructure. That's very important, and I also see it that we have a relatively cheap labor cost also, which is a very good thing in sense of developing a market and coming into it. Weaknesses I see is, as I say, these are my personal points, but I think it's quite important also to bring this in, is regular labor unrest. And we do have a lack of experienced leadership, and the rand dollar exchange rate, or our currency, is predominantly always fluctuating, and that is a concern and a weakness also to do business here. Opportunities, there's definitely a need for an end-to-end service offering, which is what goes in straight into the e-commerce sector. And there's good local partnerships already here in international investments. We also have the ability to deliver competitive pricing and products. The threats, major threats in this country is corruption. I do see there is a lag in digital solutions and platforms. A lot of work still has to be done. And another threat we see here a lot in the market is the domination of Chinese players, which are flooding the market. Now we can actually move on to more on the logistics side, and I've got a slide here showing the South African ports, the main ports. One of them is obviously the inland port, Johannesburg. The rest are Durban, Cape Town, and Port Elizabeth. We have offices in all 4 of these cities, and we also have warehouses, and we provide out of all of them an air, ocean, rail, road, and customs clearing and warehouse and distribution solutions. We are accredited with all relevant authorities, and our network expands obviously worldwide with a lot of partners, but over the years I have been able to develop, and even in some African countries open up our own offices, which helps us quite a lot to be on the African market, to basically to serve it and to also understand the African market. The next slide, I've got something which I think is also not to be forgotten, is the African challenges, or the logistic challenges which we have. I saw Dylan did highlight some of these as well in his presentation, and I would just like to go into this a bit more. I've put it into 4 segments. The first one is on the freight forwarding side, and I think as Africa has risen to prominence as an investment destination, the role of transportation and logistics has taken great significance. So as Africa's future and development will depend on the quality of its infrastructure, the efficiency of this is also dependent on its transport networks. We have some regional hubs in South Africa. We have obviously Kenya and Nigeria, which do the west and the east of Africa. But Africa will need to develop many efficient ports and airports in the future. This is in desperate need to attract shipping lines and also airlines, which in turn will provide us with better transit times and also with sailing and schedules actually to service the market. The next possible or aspect I've got here is customs clearing, which again, I think Dylan has taken some of has spoken about. We have a number of African trade, how can you say, progressive trade agreements, the main one being the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. And then we've also got the South African Development Corporation. These trade agreements stimulate growth and investment on the continent and have done a lot of good. However, it needs to be said that in many countries that the customs clearing process is subject to huge bureaucracy and corruption, which in turn then leads to longer lead times and severe costs. It is always to be careful into which country one does trade into, and I think one should consider and what terms one agrees to, especially when it comes to door-to-door deliveries. I would propose that one looks at this on a I would say, case-by-case analysis, and then see which is the best Incoterms to sell into these countries. Warehousing and distribution can be provided throughout the gateways. And I think the main gateways here again is South Africa, which provide the Southern African region and its neighboring countries. Kenya, East Africa, and Nigeria would be West Africa. The last aspect and thing I've got here is costs, and everyone is always interested in the costs, so I think we should talk about it. So as Africa continues to evolve and its logistics costs continues to weigh heavily on the country's GDP, we should discuss this. I think studies have shown that the costs of transporting goods in and out of Africa can be 5 times, 6 times, 7 times higher compared to the USA or Europe or in other continents. So it's going to take some time to develop this infrastructure, and we will catch up. But since the market is also growing, and I think more entrants are coming into the market, local businesses and also multinational businesses, overseas businesses, will be able to continue to seize this market and take the opportunities. I've got this other slide, which I think is quite important as well, regarding partnering with us. And there it is, again, it's no secret, Africa has its challenges, but it's not all doom and gloom. And I think there's a lot of growth and there's a lot of prosperity. The African market has proven itself ahead of the curve, and in many aspects, the country's opportunities lying just beneath the surface. Smart investing in Africa means investors need to understand key regions and local markets. We here as NATCO have got a lot of experience in the South African market and in the African, and we are here to deliver the African solutions to people which would like to work with us. So partnering with us would mean opportunities, security, experience, reduction of risk, and a long-term partnership. Yeah. I think, and there's, I don't know, there, my last slide, I don't know, did it go missing? Hopefully not. There it is. Then again, yeah, thank you very much for listening, and it was just a short little brief introduction, but I think if there are any questions or people would like us to do a case study, evaluate things, there are my contacts, and yeah, thank you very much. Over to you. Thanks.
Great, Patrick. Thank you very much. It all worked in the end well.
Okay.
The presentation, it was all clear on all slides, and thank you so much for your best practices in logistics in South Africa and in Africa, and to give an introduction of your company and what you can do and how it works. So thank you so much. Yeah. Volker, do you know if KwaZulu-Natal is already back on board with the connectivity?
She's back here. So I've let her in. She should be able to share.
Fantastic. Tulisili, shall we try again for your presentation?
Yes, thank you very much. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I hear you.
I am so excited to be back online, and thank
We as
you
well.
very much for all your patience.
Not a problem.
Yeah, so what I was basically saying earlier is that it really has been a year since we had the COVID-19 impact. And we know that the rising human toll worldwide and the millions of people that really remain, and the million of people that really remain unemployed are grim markers of the extreme social and economic strain that the global community is still confronted with. And yet we know that even despite this high uncertainty about the
Tulisili, do you hear me? I think we're a bit unlucky this morning regarding to the connectivity. I don't know if she hears me, but otherwise, Volkert.
Yeah, Mark, I think let's carry on, and then we can give it one final bash. Otherwise, Tuli will have to share the presentation that she was planning to give us,
Okay.
and we can send it to the participants.
Okay, yeah, it's a pity, but it is how it is at the moment. Okay, moving to the official, but let's see if KwaZulu-Natal comes back, official last speaker, Mr. Volker Wert. Volker is, let's say, is a founder and, for instance, a founder and director of Wertschode Attorneys, but he's also managing director of Interjest South Africa, and I can say also my colleague within Enterprise Africa International. And Volkert will elaborate on the e-commerce in South Africa, dus the Enterprise Africa online platform for the B2B wholesale. And yeah, Volkert, let's move on to you, and the digital floor is yours.
Thank you, Mark. Felix, will you share the screen, please? Yeah, thank you, Mark. And as Mark pointed out, this is in fact our first joint event. We recently joined SANEC as the local representative of the organization in South Africa. And yeah, very happy to be presenting today. As Mark pointed out, besides my profession as an attorney, I'm also the MD and owner of Interjest in South Africa. Interjest is a business administration company worldwide. We have 55 offices. We've been assisting international companies entering the African market for close to 20 years now. We have offices in South Africa, in Kenya, in Nairobi. And just before the COVID pandemic hit, we were in the process of opening an office in Nigeria, but that had to be put on ice pending the normalization of the business climate, I would say. During at the outbreak of the pandemic, we recognized that the landscape for investment in Africa has changed quite a bit over the years, as we've witnessed. If you take at the time when the Football World Cup was on in 2010 in South Africa, I remember very well that there were hundreds of Europeans from all nations looking for investment opportunities, wanting to invest cash and take risk. And compared, fast forward that to today, it's a very different landscape. The opportunities are still there nonetheless, but it takes a lot more effort and convincing to make these European potential investors actually put in and invest hard cash. So we've had to adapt our strategies to ensure that investment and business still happens as we would like it. And at the outbreak of the COVID pandemic, we decided to investigate the B2B e-commerce sector. And we found that this was actually a perfect solution for companies that either wanted to export into Africa for the first time at a very low risk basis, or for companies who already have some kind of a footprint or trade relation in Africa, but want to expand that using the latest technologies that are available. And e-commerce is just absolutely suited perfectly for this, because it is an opportunity for companies to sell their products, export their products at no risk, meaning that in B2B scenarios, the products are only delivered once the payment has been received in full. And obviously they are flexible logistic solutions with the right partners in the respective African countries, where flexible logistic solutions can be implemented. One can have or choose between the typical, what is known as drop shipping model, where the supplier / exporter drops and ships directly to the door of the customer in the recipient country. Or one can have, via our strategic logistic partners, Netco, for example, flexible solutions in a country with a small warehouse. It's not really necessary to have a 20, 40-foot container immediately. One can gear the growth into the market. And that is very attractive, obviously, from a risk and a cost perspective. We've prepared a short video, which I would like to play now, and then I will continue with my presentation after. Felix, if you could play the video, please.
Yes, coming up.
Okay, so thanks Felix. So as you can see, the platform itself is a unique place for European brands on a B2B level to enter the market. It gives opportunity for companies that are new to the continent to advertise their products. They are video opportunities. One can play videos, etc., to assist in the marketing of the products in the new territory. What is also unique about the offering is that we actually do localized marketing, which means the marketing required for successful market entry in South Africa, for example, is very different to what you would ordinarily have to do in Nigeria to be successful. So we've partnered with local experts and offer local marketing solutions in order to maximize market penetration. Just to give you an idea, a little bit of a statistical information about the market and potential in Africa. On the African continent, there were in last year, 2020, 281 million internet users. And as a little nice tidbit, I like to also throw in that there actually in Africa more smartphone users in Africa than in North America, which always amazes me. Turnover-wise, generated by e-commerce on the African continent last year was almost $20 billion. And that is a 41% growth compared to 2019. Obviously, that to a large extent is or was affected by COVID with the lockdowns, but we do foresee strong growth, 20 to 30% in most African countries on an annual basis going forward. So e-commerce, B2B e-commerce, and also B2C definitely is going to be with us going forward on the continent. In South Africa, the sales in 2020 was just under $4 billion. And in Nigeria, which is the second biggest, sorry, actually the biggest, was $4.9 billion. This is all in 2020. And the third biggest was Kenya at almost $2 billion. So there's definitely potential to do business. We see the platform as a part of the service offering of Interjest. So besides offering the, let's call it the traditional market entry services of legal, accounting, audit, and tax, the Enterprise Africa is a further product offering which will form part of our portfolio of services. And we are definitely very excited on the road forward. There's much to do. We use the Enterprise Africa platform as a sales tool, meaning that it's just the precursor to doing proper investment business in Africa. Once that, I call it the fear factor, has been taken away from the exporter, once they see there is in fact actual good potential for business to be made and the risk is manageable, they will then be more open to proper investment, meaning that they would incorporate companies, hire employees locally, and also manufacture locally. But this is part of the whole vision that we have, and we are of course very happy to partner with SANEC on this occasion to assist Dutch companies to venture into Africa. Yeah, thank you very much. My contact details are on the screen, and we welcome any questions that you may have going forward. We'll hand back to Mark. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much, Volker, for an explanation, a presentation, how this unique platform works, how it's beneficial, how the market entry work, how you can lower your risk by export, and all those advantages. And you saw in the video, the Netherlands will be adding to this platform, which will have a focus on four countries within Europe, and as Volker says, some key countries in Africa, and which is South Africa is one of the most important ones, but it is open for all African countries. Before we go to see I saw a lot of interactions and remarks in the chat. I want to try for the last time to see if I don't see that KwaZulu-Natal is back. Yeah.
Hi, Mark. Yes,
Hi.
I think I will share the presentation for Tulisile. Let's see if it works now. Hopefully.
Okay. Last attempt. Let's
Yes.
hope for it.
We are using Zulu fingers and throwing bones and hoping that everything is going to be fine.
Oh, now it will work out.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you.
We can just skip through to the next slide, which was basically putting in context. Click through for me, please. Yeah. So basically, what I wanted to say here is that despite the challenges that we've been facing with regards to COVID-19, we are now really starting to see a positive happening with the vaccination program that has taken place, and really it's starting to show that there's improvement in terms of our economic outlook. What's even more promising is the fact that the IMF are now projecting a stronger recovery in 2021 and 2022 for the global economy. And this is compared to the previous forecast. And what they are basically forecasting is that in 2021, the global economy is going to grow by 6% and 4.4% in terms of 2022. Move forward, please, Felix. So let's now take a look at South Africa. We know that really South Africa has really not been immune to the COVID impact. Just in terms of South Africa at a glance, the country is Africa's economic powerhouse, and it has 1.9 trillion in terms of GDP, which is about 30% of the entire continent's GDP. The country is a diverse economy, and it has multiple fastest growing industries, which are contributing significantly to the country's GDP. And because of this, what we are finding is that the country is now becoming more self-reliant. Moving forward, please, Felix. 2020 had a massive impact, which saw a massive decline in GDP levels. However, we are now starting to see a rebound in performance. In Q1, for instance, the economy grew by 1.1%. And this is translating into an annualized growth rate of 4.6%. And this really follows a revised 1.4% rise in real gross domestic product in the fourth quarter of 2020. Moving forward, please, Felix. Just in terms of the sectoral composition, we know that South Africa is dominated by 10 key sectors. And we know that finance, insurance, real estate, and business services, wholesale and retail trade, catering, accommodation, as well as manufacturing are the top 3 contributors to GDP. Moving forward, what we also know is that the key drivers to the growth that we experienced in Q1 and Q4 of 2020 and 2021 were really driven by the finance, mining, and trade, which were the most significant contributors to our GDP growth in South Africa. Moving forward, please, Felix. Now, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be going into detail in terms of each one of these key sectors that contributed to growth in terms of our economy here in South Africa. Next slide, please. The first sector that I want to talk to is actually the mining sector. The mining sector in Q1 increased at a rate of 18.1%, and it contributed about 1.2 percentage point in terms of GDP growth. This sector has continued to grow on a month-to-month basis. Earlier, for instance, in 2021, the mining production advanced by about 21.9% from a year earlier. And this was after a great performance in April of 2021. We have seen that May was actually the 3rd straight month of rising mining activity, which is reflecting the gradual recovery from the COVID-19 shock of 2020. The largest contributors in this mining sector were the platinum group of metals, which accounted for about 27% of growth, the gold, which was about 44.5%, We're looking at iron ore, which contributed about 48.4%, and then manganese ore, which contributed about 39.7%. Moving further, please, into the next slide. Looking at your finance, real estate, and business services. And this increased at a rate of about 7.4% in the first quarter of 2021. And what we know is that the Q1 performance is mostly driven by property services, which recorded a rise in mortgage advances as well as bond registrations. And we also saw an increase in the banking sector, which registered a rise in the number of credit extensions. Moving forward to the next sector, please. And that is the trade, catering, and accommodation sector. What we know about this sector is that in 2021, Q1, it increased at a rate of 6.2%, and it contributed about 0.8% in terms of the GDP growth. And the economic activities in this specific sector were really reported in the wholesale trade as well as the retail trade. Moving on to the manufacturing sector. The manufacturing sector increased at a rate of 1.6% in the first quarter of 2021. What we are seeing is that this rate of growth has contributed into the subsequent months. Manufacturing production, for instance, advanced 12.5% year on year in June 2021, and this followed an upward revised 36.3% jump in May. And when you are comparing this, we had initially projected that the market was going to expand at a rate of 11.25%, which means that in the last 2 months, it's actually expanded beyond the market expectation. The key sectors that are, the key areas that are contributing to this growth are your motor vehicles and manufacturing. You are looking at your parts and accessories, looking at other transport equipment, wood and wood products. Paper also contributed a great deal in terms of this growth. Publishing as well as printing were also the other key contributors to the sector increase. Moving on to the next one, which is the transport, storage, and communication. This particular sector grew, increased at a rate of 4.8%, and it contributed about 0.4 percentage points in terms of our GDP. And really the economic activity here was reported in land transportation as well as communication services, which is quite relevant to what we are doing here today. Next slide, please. I also felt that there was a need for you to understand our international trade partners and really looking at the South Africa's top 10 trading markets in terms of destination and source. What I really want to highlight here is that even though the Netherlands is not amongst the top 10 in terms of our importing countries, we still feel as South Africa that it really plays a significant role in terms of being our trade partner. And it has huge potential in terms of us being able to boost trade with Dutch exporting companies. Moving on to the next slide. I just wanted to give you just a brief overview in terms of KwaZulu-Natal in the context of the bigger South African economy. In terms of KwaZulu-Natal, next slide, please. It's basically the gateway to Southern Africa. And as a province, we are really well positioned as a gateway to connect global markets to Africa regional markets. And we are wanting to do this via global and regional value chains. In terms of just the quick facts, just so you understand who we are as a province, it's a garden province with 600-kilometer coastline, which really offers huge opportunities in terms of ocean economy. In terms of less mud, we are roughly the size of Portugal, and we have the biggest ports in terms of Durban and Richards Bay. In terms of the population, it's estimated to about 11.5 million people, and the majority or the bulk of them being your youth. We have 2 UNESCO heritage sites, which are Ukahlamba Drakensberg and Insimangaliso Wetlands Park. And in terms of GDP contribution to the entire South Africa, we contribute about 16% of South Africa's GDP, which therefore makes KwaZulu-Natal the second largest economy in South Africa. And we are actually ranked the 11th largest in terms of the continent nominal GDP in nominal terms. And really our key mission as the province is to become a key trade export partner for whoever it is that is wanting to do trade with us, as well as positioning ourselves as a prime investment destination to those that are interested in investing in our province. Moving on to the next slide, please. I've spoken about the fact that we are home to two of South Africa's largest or even Africa's largest ports, and those is the Durban port and the Richards Bay. And these in total are responsible for about 65% of South Africa's containerized trade. Moving on to the next slide, please. In terms of our own key strategic pillars, we really have said that we are going to focus on six key strategic pillars. And those are the industrial economic hubs, which really talk to the special economic zones where we are wanting to put ICT and broadcast hubs. We are looking at aeropropolis and aviation parts and components in terms of manufacturing. We are looking at maritime and blue economy. I told you about the 600-kilometer a coastal line, which really offers a massive opportunity on this front. Tourism and property development are also key to the province. We know that tourism has really been greatly impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, but the province is gradually clawing back and really making sure that we are focusing first on domestic tourism and then extending to international tourism. Agriculture is also our key pillar, really here looking at agri-processing and agribusiness. And that's lastly what we are seeing as a growth area for us is manufacturing, and really looking at automotive, looking at your chemicals, really looking at pharmaceuticals, as well as clothing and textile industries. Moving forward again, so what we have said is that as South Africa, we're really realizing that we've had a COVID impact COVID has had a great impact in terms of us as an economy. So what we've said is that post-COVID, we really will need to drive a new economic deal for South Africa. And we've put together a recovery plan that calls for stakeholders to partner across key areas and really focus on ensuring the delivery and accountability. And what we have said here is that we have identified critical sectors and enablers for recovery, really looking at e-commerce as one of the key sectors that we need to be looking at. We've also really developed and outlined strategies that are going to help us in terms of stimulating innovation. We're looking at infrastructure spending. We're also looking at what will be our competitive advantage. And then we've revitalized policies and regulatory inhibitors, just so as to make sure that it's easy for people to do trade with us, and making sure that there's alignment and implementation of activities. We've also really looking at interventions that are going to help us in terms of extending our trade and exports, really looking at extended fiscal support and incentives that are going to help us as a country to accelerate our growth. And also really looking at initiatives such as SANEC that are really going to help us in terms of driving this growth. And we feel that it is these initiatives that actually epitomize a collaborative partnership towards boosting exports. Last slide, please. So what we are saying is that in conclusion, in order for us to continuously enhance trade and industrialization, there really there is a need to identify priorities across industry, across economic sectors, and also make sure that we're able to emanate challenges that to address challenges that are emanating. So we are looking at being top of the agenda, issues of policy consistency, looking at issues of regulatory reform, looking at addressing issues of civil unrest, crime, and corruption that are making it difficult for us to do effective trade. We're looking at infrastructure investment, looking at energy industrialization strategy, and really looking at how we can transform our economy just so as to make sure that we're able to grow. and addressing the key issue around skill shortages and making sure that our people and labor force is upskilled. And lastly, really looking at areas of modernization in terms of investment, which is also going to include e-commerce and trade. So if you are interested in speaking to me, those are my contact details. And thank you very much once again for your patience. And I look forward to engaging as we proceed with this webinar. Thank you.
Tulisile, thank you so much. We're really happy that it all worked out in the end. We saved the best for last, the last presentation. No, it turned out to be great, and really happy to see your in-depth overview on the opportunities, but also the agenda of priorities which you shared, amongst them certain issues in combination with the opportunities, and we do appreciate our partnership highly. So we will definitely go into follow up to strengthen the relationship and to see how we can move on and strengthen import and export. I know for sure that with our e-commerce platform, we will entering back in the top 10 of best of largest exporting countries to South Africa. So that will happen again in a year time. We are back in the top 10. So thank you so much. I see when I look at the time, the webinar was planned for 10 minutes after 11. So we have reached out that moment. I saw quite a number of interactions on the chat, also with remarks. If we can do things, you know how to reach us, because if I look at time-wise, it's maybe not wise to start questions and answers. I also look to my co-partner Volker, if he prefers to do so, whether you do it later, that people can actually email us.
I've scrolled through the chat, Mark. There are no real questions per se going to the subject matters, but obviously the participants are welcome to reach out, contact us should they want any questions answered.
Yes, indeed. You know how to reach us within SANEC and within Enterprise Africa. So please do so. And yeah, we look forward to start a follow up with you. How we can help you, serving you in sending, exporting goods, but not only goods. We can also speak about services. So please do. Yeah, I would like to have a big thanks to all our speakers of this morning, Donné, Tulisile, Dylan, Patrick, and Volker. A big thanks to you. Thank you so much for your time and all contributions. And we know in the future there will be more of our webinars about e-commerce, but are more focused per sector, more in-depth per sector. So we're moving forward, but I would like to thank you very much for your contributions. And also special thanks to Felix of Enterprise Africa for organizing also all the logistics, and my colleague Hanifa. Also, thank you so much, Hanifa, for your contribution in all logistics. Having said that, I would like to thank all participants as well. And as I said, we will share presentations, recordings, and we look for one-on-one follow-up with you, guiding you to the next steps of to succeed on the South African and African market with regards to exports. Okay, Volker, special thanks to you, and it was a great opportunity, and we move on to the next moment, and we will keep communicating with all participants of this morning.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day forward.
Thank you so much, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.